The Third Crusade. After the victory of Beit al-Maqdis at the hands of Salah al-Din Ayyubi, there was a European attempt to recover it, in which the Christians of Europe failed. This war is also known as the Crusade of Kings. It continued from 1189 to 192 because the Christian army is led by the three most powerful kings of Europe: Richard the Lionheart of England and Philip Augustus of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of Germany was doing it. Through victory in this war, Saladin Ayyubi proved that he is the most powerful ruler in the world. So let's cover in detail the factors and circumstances, causes and events and facts and results that started this crusade. King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem died in 1185, leaving the kingdom of Jerusalem to his nephew Baldwin V, whom he crowned as co-king in 183. The following year, Baldwin V died before his 9th birthday, and his mother, Sibylla, sister of Baldwin IV, crowned herself queen and her husband, Guy of Lusignan, the king. Reynold of Chatillon, who supported Sibylla's claim to the throne, attacked a rich caravan from Egypt to Syria and imprisoned its passengers, thus starting a war between the Kingdom of Jerusalem and Saladin. The armistice was broken. Saladin demanded the release of the prisoners and their goods. The new crown prince, King Guy, appealed to Reynolds to comply with Saladin's demands, but Reynolds refused to comply with the king's orders. This last act of Reynolds' anger gave Saladin an opportunity to take up arms against the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and in 187, he besieged the city of Tiberias. Raymond advises patience, but Guy, following Reynolds' advice, marches his army outside Tiberias at the Horns of Hattin. Saladin's forces faced the Frankish army, in which Saladin defeated the Crusaders. It is called the Battle of Hattin. Guy and Reynold are brought to Saladin's tent, where Guy is offered a bowl of water for his great thirst. Guy took a sip and then handed the cup to Reynolds. When Reynolds accepted the drink from the hand of the cow, Saladin said to his interpreter, "Say to the king, 'It is you who have given him to drink.'" Had the drink been served in person, his life would have been spared. Afterwards, Saladin beheaded Reynolds for his past treachery. Saladin, honoring tradition, sent him to Damascus and finally allowed him to take ransom from his people. By the end of 1087 AD, Saladin had captured Acre or Acre and Jerusalem, i.e. Beit al-Maqdis, from the Crusaders. When the news of the defeat in the Battle of Hattin and the capture of Beit al-Maqdis by the Muslims reached Europe, the whole of Europe was shocked. Pope Urban III is said to have died in October 1187 after hearing of the Battle of Hattin. The new Pope, Gregory VIII, in his bull Auditi Tremendi of October 29, 1187, condemned the capture of Jerusalem as the sin of Christians throughout Europe, interpreted as punishment. In bull, he called for a new crusade to the Holy Land. On October 27, 1187, just 3 weeks after Saladin's capture of Jerusalem, Pope Gregory VIII sent letters to the German king with his election. By November 11th, Cardinal Henry of Marseille was appointed to preach the crusade in Germany. About 500 knights took the oath on the cross at Strasbourg. After taking the crusading oath on March 27, 788, Frederick announced a general campaign against the infidels. In accordance with the Pope's instructions, he fixed the preparation period from 17 April 1188 to 8 April 1189, and scheduled the assembly of the army at Regensburg on 23 April 189. The Crusades of the Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa were the most carefully planned and organized ever. Frederick was 66 years old when he departed. Since Frederick had signed a treaty of friendship with Saladin in 1175, he felt it necessary to give Saladin notice of the end of their alliance. On 26 May 1188, he sent Count Henry II of Dietz to deliver an ultimatum to Saladin, in which the Sultan was ordered to withdraw from his conquered territories, return the original cross to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and those Christians who had been killed in his conquests, or else Frederick would revoke his peace treaty with him. Frederick was the first of the three kings to set out for the Holy Land. Frederick set out on 11 May 1189 with an army of 26,000 men, including 4,000 knights. Contemporary historians estimate Frederick's army at 10,000 to 600,000 men, including troops from Hungary, Burgundy, and Lorraine. Before leaving Nash, Frederick reorganized the army, dividing it into four divisions. The vanguard of the Swabians and Bavarians was placed under the command of the Duke of Swabia. The second division of the Hungarian and Bohemian troops consisted of, who had separate commanders. The third, under the command of the Duke of Morania, was assisted by Bishop Dippold of Passau. The fourth was under Frederick's personal command, and Rupert of Nassau was appointed its commander in his absence. The Crusaders left Nash on 30 July and reached Sofia on 13 August. The following day, the Crusaders abandoned Sofia, and the Lorrainers, under Peter of Brissy, finally joined the main army. Conflict with Byzantium. During the Third Crusade, there were military conflicts between Frederick I of Germany, Frederick Barbarossa, and the Byzantine Empire, the details of which are as follows. Frederick's army passed through Byzantine territory, and the Byzantine Emperor, Isaac II Angelus, refused to provide them with supplies and support. Frederick responded by besieging the city of Philippopolis, modern Plovdiv, Bulgaria, and capturing the city. Frederick's army recaptured the surrounding area. Frederick's army then marched towards Adrianople, modern Edirne, Turkey. The Byzantine army, led by Isaac II, attempted to halt Frederick's advance. However, the Byzantines were defeated, and Adrianople too fell under the control of Frederick's army. Now Frederick's army began to advance towards Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. However, the Byzantines, fearing a siege, made a deal with Frederick allowing his army to pass through Byzantine territory, in return for a promise not to attack Constantinople. After arriving in Anatolia, Frederick faced guerrilla attacks by the Turks. A Turkish army of 10,000 men was defeated by 2,000 Crusaders at the Battle of Philomelion, in which 5,000 Turks were killed. The Crusaders then defeated their Turkish enemies at the Battle of Iconium, capturing their city and killing 3,000 Turkish soldiers. On 10 June 1190, while crossing the River Slife, Frederick's horse slipped, and he drowned in the river. After that, most of his army returned to Germany by sea. The emperor's son, with the remaining 5,000 men, reached Antioch. At Antioch, however, the German army was further reduced by fever. The German army did not achieve its goal of capturing Jerusalem, only capturing the capital of the Seljuk Empire, and killing more than 9,000 Turkish troops. Between the spring and autumn of 1189, two of Europe's most important monarchs, Henry II of England and Philip II of France, and then both took the Holy Cross. Both imposed a Saladin tax on their citizens, which was 10%, to finance the project. Henry II of England died on July 6, 1189, and was succeeded by Richard, who immediately led the Crusades. Fundraisers for the war began. Finally, in April 1190, Richard's fleet set sail. Parts of this fleet helped the Portuguese king defeat the Almohad counterattack against Santarém and Torres Novas, while another group ravaged Christian Lisbon until its leaders were captured by the Portuguese, was not captured by the king. Now, Richard and Philip II met in France at Wesley, and on July 4, 90, they left together for Lyon, where they met in Sicily. After agreeing, they parted. After the capture of Messina, Richard and Philip clashed over Richard's marriage, as Richard had decided to break off his long-standing engagement to Philip's half-sister Alice and marry Berengaria of Norway. Philip left Sicily directly for the Middle East on 30 March 91 and arrived in Tyre in April. He joined the siege of Acre on 20 April. Shortly after leaving Sicily, Richard's fleet of 180 ships and 39 galleys was caught in a violent storm. Several ships were lost, including one containing Berengaria, Richard's new betrothed, and a large amount of treasure, which had been amassed for the crusade. It was soon discovered that Isaac Doukas Comnenus of Cyprus had seized the treasure. The young women were not harmed. Richard entered Limassol on 6 May and met with Isaac, who agreed to return Richard's goods and send 500 of his troops to the Holy Land. Richard camped at Limassol, where he met the king of Jerusalem, Guy of Lusignan, and married Berengaria, who was crowned queen. There, Isaac broke his oath of hospitality and ordered Richard to leave the island. Because of Isaac's arrogance, Richard conquered the island. However, Beethoven's anonymous chronicler suggests that Richard attacked Cyprus because Isaac was blocking the supply of food to the Latin army at Acre. However, most modern scholars accept that Richard's conquest of Cyprus was accidental. Siege of Acre of 189 to 191. Saladin released the Cow of Jerusalem from prison in 1189. Guy tried to take command of the Christian forces at Tyre, but Conrad of Montferrat took power there after successfully defending the city from Muslim attacks. Guy turned his attention to the wealthy port of Acre. He gathered an army to besiege the city and enlisted the help of Philip's newly arrived French army. The combined forces were not enough to confront Saladin, however, and his forces besieged Acre. In the summer of 1090, there were outbreaks of disease in the camp, in one of which Queen Sibylla and her young daughters died. This prince, though only king by right of marriage, tried to retain his crown, even though the rightful heir was Sibylla's half-sister, Isabella. After a hastily arranged divorce from Humphrey IV of Turin, Isabella married Conrad of Montferrat, who claimed the kingdom in his own name. During the winter of 1090–91, epidemics of dysentery and fever became more widespread, claiming the lives of Frederick of Swabia, Patriarch Heraclius of Jerusalem, and Theobald V of Blois. When the sailing season resumed in the spring of 1191, Leopold V of Austria arrived and took command of the remnants of the imperial forces. Philip of France arrived with his forces from Sicily in May. A neighboring army under Leodum of Cletian Armenia also arrived. Richard finally reached Acre on 8 June 1100 and immediately began overseeing the construction of siege weapons to attack the city. Acre was captured on 12 July. Richard, Philip, and Leopold quarreled over the spoils. Richard supported Guy, while Philip and Leopold supported Conrad. It was eventually decided that Guy would continue to rule, but Conrad would be entitled to the crown after his death. Frustrated with Richard, Philip and Leopold took their armies and left the Holy Land in August. On 18 June 1191, Richard sent a messenger to Saladin, requesting a face-to-face meeting. Saladin refused, saying that it was the custom of kings to agree to a peace treaty when they met, and after that, they do not seem to fight each other. The two therefore never met, although they exchanged gifts. And Richard had several meetings with Saladin's brother Al-Adil. Saladin tried to negotiate with Richard for the release of captured Muslim soldiers, including their women and children. However, on 20 August, Richard thought that Saladin had delayed too long and beheaded 2,700 Muslim prisoners of Saladin's army. Saladin responded by killing all the Christian prisoners he captured. After the fall of Acre, the Crusaders recaptured parts of the interior of Galilee, including Melia and Baena. Battle of Arsuf, or War of Arsuf. After capturing Acre, Richard decided to march towards the city of Jaffa. Control of Jaffa was essential before an attack on Jerusalem could be attempted. However, on 7 September 1091, Saladin attacked Richard's army at Arsuf, 30 miles north of Jaffa. Saladin tried to harass Richard's army in order to break its formation. However, Richard maintained his army's defensive formation. The Hospitallers attacked the right flank of Saladin's forces, while Richard used a ordered general attack, which Richard won the battle. Arsuf was an important victory. The Muslim army did not lose heart despite losing 7,000 men. But Arsuf had damaged Saladin's reputation as an indomitable warrior and proved Richard's courage as a soldier and his skill as a commander. Richard's capture of Jaffa thus deprived Salah al-Din of the coast, threatening the defense of Jerusalem. Progress on Jerusalem and negotiations. After his victory at Arsuf, Richard took Jaffa and established his new headquarters there. He offered to open negotiations with Saladin, who sent his brother Al-Adil, known as Safaddin, to meet Richard. Negotiations, which included attempts to marry Richard's sister Joan or niece Eleanor, fair maid of Brittany, to Al-Adil, failed. and Richard marched to Ascalon, which had recently been sacked by Saladin. In November 1091, the Crusaders advanced inland towards Jerusalem. On December 12th, Saladin was forced by pressure from his emirs to disband the bulk of his army. Seeing this, Richard led his army forward, spending Christmas at Laterne. After that, the army moved to beat Nuba, only 12 miles away from Jerusalem. Despite terribly bad weather, cold with heavy rain and sleet, the army laid siege to Jerusalem, only to be trapped by a relief force, which led to the decision to retreat to the coast. Richard asks Conrad to join him on the expedition, but he refuses, citing Richard's alliance with King Guy. He was also negotiating with Saladin as a defense against any attempt by Richard to snatch the tire for the cow. However, in April, Richard was forced to recognize Conrad as king of Jerusalem after electing the princes of the kingdom. The boy did not get any votes at all. Richard sold him Cyprus as compensation. Before he could be crowned, Conrad was stabbed to death by 2 assassins in the streets of Tyre. 8 days later, Richard's nephew, Henry II of Champagne, married Queen Isabella, who was pregnant with Conrad's child. It was strongly suspected that the king's assassins had acted on Richard's instructions. During the winter months, Richard's men captured and restored Ascalon, the fortifications of which had previously been demolished by Saladin. The spring of 1192 saw continued negotiations and further clashes between the opposing forces. On May 22nd, the strategically important city of Darm, on the borders of Egypt, fell to the Crusaders after 5 days of fierce fighting. The Crusaders made another advance on Jerusalem, which was also repulsed. Dissensions now arose among the Crusader leaders. Richard and the majority of the military council wanted to force Saladin to withdraw from Jerusalem by invading Egypt, while the head of the French contingent, the Duke of Burgundy, insisted on a direct attack on Jerusalem. He split the Crusader army into 2 factions. At this, Richard said that he would support any attack on Jerusalem, but only as a simple soldier. He refused to lead the army. Without a unified command, the army had no choice but to retreat to the coast. Saladin's attempt to recapture Jaffa. Battle of Jaffa, 1192. In July 1192, Saladin's army made a surprise attack and captured Jaffa with thousands of men. When Richard heard that Saladin and his army had captured Jaffa, he postponed his return to England. He took a small force of a little over 2,000 men, and in a surprise attack reached Jaffa by sea and stormed the city, and the Ayyubids, who were unprepared for a naval attack, were driven from the city. Richard freed those of the Crusader garrison who had been taken prisoner, and these soldiers helped to bolster the numbers of his army. However, Saladin's army still had a numerical advantage and counterattacked. Saladin planned a sneak attack at dawn, but his forces were discovered. He continued his attack, but his men were lightly armored and lost 700 men due to the large number of Crusader archers. The battle to recapture Jaffa ended in the complete failure of Saladin, who was forced to retreat. This battle greatly strengthened the position of the coastal Crusader states. On 2 September 1092, after his defeat at Jaffa, Saladin was forced to finalize a treaty with Richard that stipulated that Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control. while unarmed Christian pilgrims and merchants would be allowed to enter the city, would be allowed to visit. Ascalon was a controversial issue because it threatened the connection between Saladin's dominions in Egypt and Syria. Eventually, it was agreed that Ascalon's defenses would be demolished, returning it to Saladin's control. Richard left the Holy Land on 9 October of 1592. Treaty of Jaffa, 1992. The Third Crusade did not achieve its goal of recapturing Jerusalem. However, it facilitated the continuation of the Crusader states, which were on the brink of collapse, which was further strengthened by the occupation of Cyprus. Under the terms of the treaty, Muslims occupied Palestine and most of the surrounding areas, except for a narrow strip from Tyre to Jaffa, which remained under Christian control. Inland, parts of the Galilee were retaken by the Crusaders, and further south, control of Ramallah and Lydda was to be divided between the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the Ayyubid Empire. The Muslim occupation of Jerusalem remained intact. Christian and Muslim pilgrims could safely visit Jerusalem. Both sides also agreed on a 3-year ceasefire. Synopsis. Neither side was entirely satisfied with the outcome of the Third Crusade. Although Richard's conquests deprived the Muslims of important coastal areas and re-established a viable Frankish state in Palestine, many Christians in the Latin West expressed despair at their recapture of Jerusalem. Similarly, many people in the Islamic world felt troubled that Saladin failed to expel the Christians from Syria and Palestine. However, trade flourished throughout the Middle East and in port cities along the Mediterranean coast. Richard was arrested and imprisoned in December 1192 by Duke Leopold V of Austria, who suspected Richard of the murder of his cousin Conrad of Montferrat. He was later transferred to the custody of the Roman Emperor Henry VI, and a ransom of 150,000 marks was demanded for his release. Richard returned to England in 1194 and died of a crossbow bolt wound while suppressing a rebellion in Limousin in 1199 at the age of 41. In 1193, Saladin died of yellow fever. His heirs quarreled over the succession and eventually fragmented his empire. Henry of Champagne died in an accidental fall in 1197. Queen Isabella then married a 4th time to Amalric of Lusignan, who had succeeded his brother Guy as King of Cyprus. After his death in 1205, his eldest daughter Maria of Montferrat, born after her father's murder, succeeded to the throne of Jerusalem.